Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz drummer Akira Tana. We caught up with him on May 6, 2020, during the early phases of the COVID-19 lockdown to talk about what has been going on in his life in music. He was born and raised in California and earned degrees from Harvard University and the New England Conservatory of Music. He's gigged with legends like Sonny Rollins, Sonny Stitt, Zoot Sims, Hubert Laws, and the list goes on and on. He co-led a quintet with the bassist Rufus Reid called TanaReid. This is a cat full of rich stories and insights. Enjoy.
Well, man, thank you for taking some time out today. I guess I just wanted to kind of catch up about your life in music and start out with, initially, what are you doing to kind of fulfill your creative id during this world shutdown that we're going through?
Oh, yeah, I'm creating commentary for Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, and Apple TV, and kind of posting it on my own blog, which I only see myself reading. I'm just kidding. But, actually, this past year, I've been teaching at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, a jazz program that they had started maybe about 2-3 years ago. And so I've been teaching there. So, of course, all my live performances, since March, just like with everybody else in the world, have been put on hold or canceled, and my stuff is canceled all the way through August so far. So, it's pretty frightening, and it's kind of course, everyone says this new normal and stuff, but I mean, this is going to be, it's going to be like restrictions on musicians being together and sharing music with each other and also with the audiences. I mean, it's pretty frightening. I mean, just the isolation. I mean, how can you, of course, for solo instrumentalists and instruments that can be played in a solo way, man, it's depressing. So
yeah,
as far as what I'm doing, I'm just trying to take it in stride and just maybe working on writing music more. I mean, of course, I have to kind of return and kind of reinvent all this electronic, like, MIDI stuff and keyboard stuff to do writing, which I used to do. And I used to be very busy doing that up until a certain time, and then some producing projects and recording projects came up, and I kind of went away from that. So, I'm trying to take advantage of this time to actually maybe kind of ramp up my interest in doing that. So it's coming along slowly. It's hard. It's not like you can just flip the switch and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. It's something you kind of have to kind of feel the inspiration. And so I'm kind of slowly getting to that point. So that's basically, and also, I've always wanted an excuse to be at home, not go anywhere, and do nothing. So I'm happy about that.
No, well, I think there's a lot of people that have been wanting to have some, downtime, and I think they've realized that there's a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, one thing I do not miss, as far as working and traveling, is that I don't miss the traveling. And as far as working locally around the Bay Area, I do not miss the driving. I mean, it's like, that's one aspect of it I don't miss at all. Because, after you've been, doing this kind of work for a number of years, traveling, including flying and stuff like that, it gets to be pretty wearing, and you don't realize how wearing it is on yourself and on your psyche until you don't have to do it for a while. So that I don't miss.
Yeah, without a doubt. So talk to me a little bit about your beginnings in jazz. How did all this start for you?
How long is this interview? It actually goes back to when I was a youth. And my older brothers, and growing up in Palo Alto, were actually big music fans. And my oldest brother was a big jazz fan. And he used to have these LPs of like MJQ, Lionel Hampton, and people like that. And so I used to hear this music. And he and another brother used to take me to these concerts at the Frost Amphitheater in Stanford University, and I got a chance to hear Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald and people like that when I was maybe 10 or 11. And so it's not that I grew up like in a jazz family, for example, like the Marsalis family or anything like that. But I was exposed to the music and just like probably more so than a lot of kids, unless you have someone in the family, who's into the music. So, from an early age, I was exposed to it, and the interest actually grew more intense and varied as I got older, and as I started playing music on the drums, and just like like in junior high school, like in 7th, 8th, ninth grade. I mean, I used to play in rock and roll and R&B bands for dances, and then got interested in jazz and kind of took it on from there. But it had a little hiatus because I was in sports, and so I was played like high school athletics like football and basketball and baseball, which I'm now physically paying the price for. But the music has always been a part of my life, and fortunately, I've been able to kind of be involved professionally for a long time. So I feel fortunate about that because you realize how difficult it is sustain anything in this art form. So I could go into more detail,
Yeah.
but I don't want to.
No, that's good. That's great. No, what do you like best about being a musician?
To the drugs, the women.
Typical answers.
I don't know. It's first of all, I think I'm just feel fortunate, to be able to be doing something that I have felt passionate about ever since I was young, and it's always been part of me. Although it has taken some detours, for school and whatever reasons. But so I think what I really enjoy about it is the freedom to be able to, especially in this music, to express yourself creatively and spontaneously. And so that's what I really enjoy about it. And it changes from each performance to each performance, and it can be frustrating sometimes because something may have happened to you. It happens in life also. Something great happened on one occasion, and you want to kind of recreate that feeling and expression and kind of put it in a bottle and kind of be able to use it anytime you want. And that doesn't happen, because the next time you play, it may not be the greatest experience. But I mean, just kind of hoping that, for the special time that it happens will come again is kind of keeps you here. It's like golf, you score like, you have a couple birdies in one round, but you score okay, and then the next day you play terrible, but those good moments actually keep bringing you back. So that's kind of how I feel about music.
What was the first live jazz show that you ever saw that made you think that this is what you want to do?
The first jazz shows that I do were actually not great ones, and they were actually in the form of some kind of rejection that kind of made me want to improve. And then when I was built in Palo Alto, and I was back home in the summertime from schools, and I was really into playing drums and like trying to play jazz, but not really knowing what it took to learn how to play jazz. But I like to play the drums and emulate certain players and stuff like that. So there was a band called The Fourth Way in San Francisco in the 70s, led by Mike Knock, drummer Eddie Marshall, Michael White. It's actually kind of a precursor to like Weather Report because they were doing electric music and more fusion stuff. Anyways, Mike and his trio with Ron McClure and Eddie Marshall, the drummer, had a gig in Palo Alto. And so I went to see them, and Eddie Marshall didn't show up. And so as a kind of off-the-cuff joke, like Mike Nosek was their drummer in the house. And so, of course, I said, yeah, I'm a drummer. And he says, well, do you have your stuff with you? And of course, I have my drums in the car. So I went, set them up and played, but, I had no idea about what it took to actually be able to get on stage and play with those guys, because I was basically going by emotion and ear and just kind of bashing away. And so they said, okay, let's play. So they played a blues. And it was like Mike Knock in his trio, and the drummer didn't show up, Eddie Marshall. So I played. Of course, I didn't know anything about, what it required to actually know how to learn to play this music. And so, and the truth came out very quickly. And so they asked me to lead the bandstand, and that was pretty embarrassing, in front of an audience, thinking, oh man, this is a great time. People get to hear me. I get to play music. And that was a negative thing that happened to me, but for some reason it kind of kicked in this desire to actually study this music, and so that was probably one of the most important things that happened to me. And I can remember everything about it, and this was like almost 50 years ago, right? So, but in general, though, I think being able to play this music and play eventually with people that were also learning it was very inspiring. But that was probably an experience that I'll never forget that kind of spurred me on. Does that answer your question?
Yep, absolutely it does.
Okay.
So I want to know from you, we're going to get back to live music one way or another.
Okay.
Both the audience and the musician. What do you hope we learn from this time away?
It's like sometimes you don't really appreciate what you have or what we have until it's taken away from us globally. I mean, we've come to the point where we take everything for granted, our lives, all the things that we have. And this pandemic and being away from everything kind of gives you a chance to kind of ruminate and think about, what we had. How are we going to get back to that, if we can at all, the way it was? And so musically, is kind of realize how fortunate we've been to be able to play music and share it with an audience, and play festivals where there's like not very much social distancing happening. And it's like, well, what's going to happen? How are we going to get back to any semblance of normalcy? But so those kinds of things I think about, like having performances canceled all the way through August for me, and I'm supposed to bring a group to the Monterey Jazz Festival in September, end of September, and I was supposed to do some international traveling. I was like, wow, is that going to happen? How are they going to, what are they going to do? I guess they have to get to a certain stage 4 or something of the process of opening up businesses and cities and stuff like that. So it's kind of scary.
It is scary. The whole thing is, man. So I want to know from you, everyone has their perception of who you are, your family, your friends, and your fan base, but who do you think you are?
Well, you have some tough questions, Joe. Well, that's good. Well, I don't know. I guess I just consider myself a fortunate individual to have carved some kind of career out of doing something that I love doing over the years, and I know that it's a difficult thing to do, and especially with having students, young students, and trying to imagine, what kinds of things that they're going to have to go through coming up in the years ahead in terms of how they're going to navigate the realities of being an artist. So I just kind of feel myself as very fortunate. I remember when I was going to music school, and hanging out with Jackie Byard, and he was talking about how, maybe 5% of music students in any genre will end up making a living performing music. Of course, there's teaching and there's all different aspects of the industry that people can get into. But he was just saying how difficult it is. And I don't know if he was discouraging me or not, but he was just talking about the realities of it. And so that's an experience that I'll never forget, having this conversation with him. But I just kind of feel like I feel fortunate that I can have had the career that I've had thus far, and it could end anytime, and it's hard to sustain. I remember my friend Billy Hart was telling me, that you can get a certain a level of performance and playing, but the challenge to make it over a career is the most difficult thing, to sustain what you've been doing. So it's been a challenge, and you think about, well, how do you do that? How, do you keep creating and have an audience for it and stuff like that? And, so that's basically how I feel about it. I'm fortunate and have been able to sustain something as small as it may be in terms of the entire industry. I feel fortunate. So that's who I am as a drummer, as a jazz musician, and as an artist. And it may not, it could end any time. I mean, it could have ended in March with all this stuff, right, as far as performance. So.
No, that's great. That's great. You've done wonderful, man. Thank you for opening up about your life in music, this COVID-19 world, and beyond. I really appreciate it.
I'll check your shows out, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in California, Missouri, and spots all over America, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Akira for his cool time in music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.